Hey guys, welcome to another behind the scenes. We're going to look at some recent animations, this week being getting killed by Donald Trump and breaking Farmer Steve out of prison. So here we have the Donald Trump one. This is set in survival Mineplex survival games, which I've done, I think only like two. I think I've done two survival games videos. After I did the first one, this one got suggested a bunch. What was that video called? The coffee one, that was right. The coffee one, if you remember. After doing that one, whenever I do an animation on a new series, I guess if you want to call it. So, for example, the coffee one was the first time I ever did a Mineplex or survival games animation. Whenever I do a new series like that, I get a bunch of suggestions from other possible animations from this similar series. And I had watched the original episode or the original video when it first came out a while ago, and I was trying to think, I was thinking back to it, and thought to myself, I don't really remember there ever being like a moment to animate with that. But after I saw like a bunch of suggestions for it, like more I think than I've ever seen for another video, which is weird because it wasn't like a super standout moment. But anyway, I watched it back and I was like, oh right, this. So I had to do a little bit of work to get it, because by itself, if you guys, I don't know if you will go and watch the video if you remember, it's not like super, like some moments are just like easy mode where I can just take the audio, cut it down a little bit, and be like, this is gonna work perfect as is. With this one, I had to do a little bit more work. I grabbed a bunch of sound bites, just from random like interviews and stuff, Donald Trump interviews, to mix in, which I think the ones I found fit pretty well. So I had to do a little bit extra work in that sense, but yeah, I really like how the final product came out. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot to go off. Actually, the terrain actually comes from the actual game itself. No one sends me the world saves or anything like that. So with this one, and I've used this mod a couple times, so I'll go ahead and open Minecraft here. It's a mod called Light Loader, which allows you to just download world maps from servers. So if I go ahead and just hop in Mineplex here to show you how this works, here in the lobby, which is super obnoxious. Let me just kind of get away from the people. So basically, you have this option here, download this world. You can click on this for options. I'll go ahead and rename it to something else, like Mineplex, or I'll just do Mineplex lobby, something like that. So yeah, you can get more in depth with the settings. The default worked pretty well, worked fine for me at least. And then you hit download this world, and what it's going to do now, you just play normal, walk around, do whatever chunks you load will be downloaded. If there are any chests or anything like that you want to also be downloaded, you have to actually open the chest. Or if there's a furnace, with stuff in it, you actually have to open the furnace if you want that stuff to be recorded and downloaded. But I can just walk around here, like I said, whatever chunks get loaded will get saved. So done that, I'll go ahead and just stop the download, it'll save it off. And now if I go into single player and hop in, you can see now we have the world. Let me go ahead and hop into game mode one here. Some horses being killed, but you can see we have the world, all the entities along with it. And then outside of that, it'll just start generating, as you can see here, just more new terrain, Ender Dragon stuff. But yeah, you can see it. So this is a huge time saver. Well, what the heck happened here? This is a huge time saver when it comes to, instead of having to, kind of replicate, which I wouldn't be able to replicate to that, perfectly anyway without spending, a whole ton of time. So this is a really huge time saver, which is nice, because terrain really, honestly, with certain animations, terrain can take up a lot of time prepping terrain. So I'll go ahead and hop into the next one and talk about that a little bit more. Alright, so here's the prison break animation. And this is an example where I actually, make the terrain by hand. So you can see this is just a super flat world. This over here on the left was something I had already made for an older animation, the I'm Just a Chicken one. And then this on the right I had to make for this one. But this is really time consuming to do, because it's not just where you're making buildings or whatever it be, or walls or whatever. You actually have to go in the video, scrub through, figure out, the rough dimensions, and do your best to make it look as close to the real thing as possible so people know what it is. So it's, it takes a couple hours, setting up terrain if I have to do it by hand. So it's really nice if I can use, get the terrain somewhere else, whether it be something offline or using Light Loader to, actually just take it from the server. There's actually a really good replica of the Mighty Knight Season 1 terrain, which I showed off in another behind the scenes. That, you know, those kind of things, they really save a lot of time. So it's nice if I can find the terrain somewhere else, but sometimes I just have to brute force it and make it by hand. As far as the actual animation goes, this one was a little bit more action-packed, I guess, than the Trump one. You know, with all the prison break stuff. I don't know. As far as the pig goes, he actually only has one control for the mouth. Like, so when lip syncing and stuff, there's literally just this one control, whoops, that just moves up and down. So he's just kind of, there isn't really any lip syncing, I guess you could call it. It's just up, down, up, down. Another thing I noticed that's funny, which I've noticed before, but most of the animations being based on Captain Sparklez, I'm very used to animating like mouths to his voice or like the way he talks and stuff. So whenever I'm doing other people like Syndicate in this one, it's like it's more difficult because I can actually just look I mean, for a lot of the lip syncing, I can just look at the waveform. Like I'll play it back once and you know, listen to the actual words, and then I can use just the waveform to match the mouth up, and I can do it really quick. I can do like, you know, if it's just Jordan in the video, I can do like the whole animation in like 10 minutes. As far as the lip syncing goes, not the whole animation, geez. But I can, you know, do that really fast, and then doing with other people like Syndicate and stuff, it's surprising how different the mouth pattern is, I guess, that goes with, you know, each person. So I don't know, I kind of thought that was interesting, which I noticed particularly in this animation. As far as the other stuff goes, let me talk about actually the material I use for the terrain. So this is a redshift thing. I didn't really have time to get into this the last behind the scenes. But this material on it right now is just a typical Lambert, and this is more for show when I'm animating. The actual material that I use when rendering is, it doesn't render in the, it doesn't render the texture in the hardware render. So if I go here and assign it, you can see. So this is the actual material that's on the terrain when it gets rendered, and this is what's called a sprite. Now this solves a problem that I mean, I've always had, or, you know, everybody has to work with, but it's not super hard to work around. But it's kind of a nice thing Redshift adds to, kind of adds in instead of just replacing. This is something new I've never really used before or seen before, which is really cool. So let me go ahead and show you first off. So it has to do with how the alpha channel is dealt with. So with a typical Lambert or whatever material you're using, you plug in a texture, some, you know, transparency map or whatever into the transparency of the material, and it gets rid of everything that you don't want to see, obviously. So if we go back, let me go ahead and just undo that. You know, in the leaves, this isn't the actual mesh that's, you know, cut out of the leaves. It's just a normal plane, and then there's a alpha channel that says, you know, don't let these parts of the leaves be visible. And that's always worked fine, and that works fine for, you know, most people. You know, iron bars, same situation. You just have planes, and then there's alpha channel where there shouldn't be anything. So if you've done anything 3D, then this is nothing new to you. But what the sprite does is it takes whatever shaders you want to use. So I actually use an architectural redshift shader for the actual terrain, and you plug it into this sprite node. So you can see that shader is plugged in right now. And it takes, then you plug in your alpha channel. So you can see here, terrain alpha channel I have plugged in. And it actually, when it comes down to rendering it, it'll tessellate the mesh so that there's an actual cutout of the geometry. So instead of it, when it comes to render time at least, instead of it being a plane, it'll tessellate this so that there's just geometry where the bars are. Now this may just be like, okay, so what's the difference? But there are things, certain depending on how you render them, but there are certain things that ignore textures completely and are just looking at the geometry. For example, ambient occlusion ignores any textures. It's just looking at the geometry. So if I go ahead and let me pull up an older video here.
It's been a super one.
This is TNT for certificate. I can't say that. But you can see here, there's these redstone X's. These are just planes with, with flat planes, just like the bars with, a color channel for the redstone part, and then an alpha channel masking off the rest of it, so it's transparent. But you can see it's still dark there, and that's caused because there's ambient occlusion, over top this whole terrain. And since ambient occlusion still sees this as an entire, like a flat square instead of just where the redstone is, it's applying that ambient occlusion to the entire plane. So with the example with the sprite, it would actually cut out that area where there's no texture and just be the geometry, so you wouldn't have that kind of thing. So that's an example of how this can be nice, or how it can be helpful. Another example is depth of field. Depending on how you render it, ignores textures. It's just looking at the silhouette of the geometry. So there are certain things where this just makes it a lot easier. There's always been workarounds for this kind of stuff like this. This is something I didn't notice until it was kind of too late to, not have enough time to fix it. So I just had to leave it in there because there are workarounds, but this just makes it a whole lot easier. So this is something cool I've been using instead of just using your traditional alpha channel, which just makes it a little bit easier. It does have some weird, I guess, thing with it. So if we look at the fire here, I'll go ahead and zoom into the fire. These have that same sprite shader. Well, it's a different shader, but it's a sprite shader nonetheless. With low resolution textures, just like with normal low resolution textures, it's being filtered, so you can see these weird rounded edges that come from it. So these are just because it's really low resolution. You can change it's called stencil opacity threshold, which basically says how close to 0 transparency does it have to be to get cut out, if that makes any sense. Which kind of helps with it a little bit, but I mean, I can fix this. I just have to scale up the texture like a much higher resolution, which is kind of annoying, but I haven't had a chance to do that. But that's the only really problem I have with it. Other than that, it's really nice, really nice, cool kind of node they have added in. Other than that, I kind of went off on like almost like a rant or something there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching.